Whoever wants to. Okay, cool. So we're live
I
now.
I mean, I guess I'll start. Hey, Houma Language Project fans and Facebook friends and just anyone else that ends up on our social media today. This is Colleen Billiot. I am not going to show you all my quarantine 15 plus weight gain, so y'all are just going to have to deal with my old professional photo. I'm one of the co-founders of the Houma Language Project. I have Ben Wood and Brittany Jimenez with me today.
Jimenez.
Sorry, Brittany Verdin Jimenez. And oh, did I say your last name wrong?
No, you got it. Jimenez.
Okay. All right. I was like, after 2 years, you think I would know this. And we're doing our second Ask Me Anything. So our second HLP AMA. As I said, I am the co-founder. I've been working on this with Haley Dardar since 2013. And I'll let Ben and Brittany just give you a little background on how long they've been with the project and what they bring to the table. We're very fortunate to have them both and the other members of our team who could not make it today. So, Brittany, take it away, please.
Hey y'all, like she said, I'm Brittany. I came into this group about 2 years now. Very much wanting to learn my language and more about my culture because I've been involved with my tribe since very young. My grandmother made sure that we knew who we were. And so language was the next step in that process. And so I'm not educated in linguist capacity or anything. I'm what you would call probably a community linguist. Is that right, Ben? I'll just come in with a passion and a know-how to get it done. So that's what I do. Also, I take notes whenever we have meetings. I help make up our minds, like decisions or whether like we want to go this route or this route, with the research that we do. I look things up that's available to people that, are just like me. And that's what I do. And I've been going strong and it's probably going to be that way for the rest of my life. I'm here to stay.
You better be. What would we do without you? And Ben, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey, I'm Ben. I'm not part of the Houma community. I was a undergraduate at LSU in 2013 when Colleen and Haley approached me about this new project that they wanted to start. And so they kind of took me on as a little student researcher. And I've been helping out with them kind of off and on for the past, 7 years now. Wow, it's been a long time. But yeah, so we got everyone together in late 2018 to start working on the new aspects of this project. And so my role in that has kind of been to look at Choctaw and Chickasaw, kind of research their grammatical foundations, because I'm a trained linguist, and kind of communicate these grammar concepts to the language team. And so I think that's what we wanted to talk about today. And if y'all have any questions about how we did that or like what the process is, feel free to leave a comment.
Yeah, thank you both. And I am going to get into a little bit of background about HLP, what we discussed in our last AMA, and what we want to share today. But just very quickly, I want to give a few more kudos to Brittany and Ben. We really do. We wanted to hold to the nature and the true, concept is not the word here, but we wanted to honor what the Houma language was, it, even in centuries lost to us. So, we knew that this was in between Chickasaw and Choctaw. And so Brittany and Ben and myself too, but I really want to give them credit. Like, they have really forged that network and those contacts that we can always reach out to with our Chickasaw and Choctaw relations and try and make sure that we're on the right path with things, which has been really great. They've both spoken at largely virtual conferences thus far, but I got to hang out with Ben and Haley Dardar at SILA, and I don't remember what that acronym stands for, last year, right before all the COVID stuff started. So we are trying to get the word out about our project and also hear about what other Indigenous groups are doing. If you don't know a lot about Houma Language Project, when it began in 2013, it was interesting, and it was a nice parallel that it began because I had a recording of my great grandmother Elvira Molinaire Billiot and a woman named Valentine Dardar. and they were singing in Houma. They were the last two women known to quote unquote sing in Indian or sing in Houma that anyone in the tribe knew about. The recording had been made prior to my lifetime, and it had been passed down this cassette. So when Haley and I met and we were a Bilyat and a Dardar, I was like, oh, this is perfect. You know, we have to work on this. We have to focus on this because language is so important to strengthening community ties and relationships. And it allows you to express yourself differently and think in a different way. So last time we had an AMA, again, for those who aren't so tech savvy, it's an Ask Me Anything. It was really to share that we had ironed out our alphabet and our transcription of words from Choctaw to Houma. Because again, we want to strike that balance between Chickasaw and Choctaw. So we're doing largely Choctaw vocabulary transcribed into Houma alphabet, obviously, but then Chickasaw grammar. So last time we told you about the alphabet, we told you about transcription. So we told you a lot about, you know, our connection to Choctaw. And this time we're going to talk more about the grammar that rules that we've been working on, that we've made decisions on. And largely, again, they come from Chickasaw. But we do talk to both Choctaw and Chickasaw speakers and linguists. And before I forget, I want to give a shout out to Josh and Sam and Jason, because those are people that we hit up pretty frequently going, hey, I have a question. How do your people say this? Or how does your community? Because everything's different between communities and regions, right? So Brittany or Ben, oh, thank you, David. David Kaufman is another linguist. He's on the chat already telling me what Scylla means. But Brittany or Ben, do you want to add any takeaways that you've gotten from this last year about working on the grammar, or any interesting things that you noted while we were doing that work?
Ben, you could take the technical side of this because there is a lot to it that you had to break down even to make it presentable for us. So you could do that and I'll carry on with it.
Yeah, so just the first part is that a lot of the linguistic informations, like how these languages have been described, is written in a way that's meant for trained linguists and not necessarily for the community. So part of my job has been kind of to make that transition from, you know, this technical linguistic writing to something that anyone can access. And that's been really interesting because there's a lot of really cool grammar patterns in these languages. That's a lot different than English or French or Spanish. Yeah, it's been really fun. It's fun for me as a linguist because I get to kind of explore these grammatical concepts, and then it's also fun because I get to like teach other people these really cool things that these languages do. And so I don't know, Brittany, you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I agree. It is a lot of fun. Even as a community linguist, and just me personally, I've always been very interested in words and what we could take from them, what we could add to them. But it's really sobering too. When you, like with any language, you realize that you have to change your way of thinking. Like you're trained in the way of this language. Your mind is trained. And so you have to basically untrain yourself to be able to navigate these new languages. And it's not any different for these indigenous languages. I mean, the reason why I say it's sobering is because some of these things are almost lost. You know, changing the way that you look at nature around you, or even your relationships with each other. And that's something that we're also going to try and tackle this year, is naming our relationships. And relationships evolve. You know, last time our language was spoken was probably in the 1800s. So relationships have evolved from them, but there's still that basic, you know, decency, like in our spirit is there, you know, of who we are and how we relate to each other. But yeah, it's like Ben said, it's really fun to be able to find these things out and grow. But I've changed a lot in my way of thinking, and that's just from first being involved with Mobilian, and then Choctaw, and now Houma. Just those three languages, you know, there has changed me a lot in the course of like 2 years.
Yeah, I know for me personally,
Yeah.
when
Anyway.
just learning basic words initially when we were working on. We have a working dictionary. We'll eventually have a dictionary that we share out with everyone. This is more just for us to be able to make basic sentences, but it still needs more words um, before we share it with others. But I know just having that basic vocabulary does change how you think. And I know, like, in moments when I'm very grateful for stuff going on in my life, literally I'll find myself saying yakuke and I don't even realize that I've said it until it's already out of my mouth. And I'm like, oh yeah, like that's it's just a paradigm shift in your head, you know? And but it's important too. And like Brittany said, I think a lot of times, a lot of this, it's built in and it's inherent somehow, and you don't realize it. And the more you work with language and the more you look at, for us, this past year, the grammar decisions we've had to make, we use all of our resources to make them, but the ones that we make usually just inherently feel right. It feels like the right way to say something. And more as we practice, we also find that too. One of us will say something and go, wait a minute, think that there should be an emphasis here. There's a vowel missing there because it doesn't feel right in my mouth. It doesn't sound right. So I think it's
it doesn't roll off the tongue right, and we didn't know it before.
Or it's tongue twisting and it's tripping us up, and we have to say it about 5 times. Fair warning.
She's saying it's real. It's like I've bit my tongue so many times. Once we got to the place where we can like make sentences with what we've decided and what we've learned. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, fair warning to anyone who's interested in learning. Obviously, we want you to learn when we're ready to start teaching, and we still have some steps to get to that point, but just be warned, like you can have a one-word sentence and it's your verb and your pronouns and your tense and all these things in one word. And between that, the rhythmic lengthening, the nasal sounds, I have to say them myself like 3 times in my head before I try and speak them. And it sounds so good in my head. What comes out of my mouth is so horribly wrong. But yes.
Takes a lot of practice.
It does, but you get better every time, and working with a group, others hear that and they acknowledge it before you even realize that you're improving. Are there any other things that we want to talk about so far as the grammar specifically, y'all, or do we kind of want to move on to our next steps and what we're working on now, what we hope to work on, things of that nature?
I guess we go to the next steps. I think that covered the bases. Unless someone comes back with a question, I don't mind going back to it.
Yeah. I saw mutual shrugs of sure, let's go on. So I guess that's what we'll do. And again, I'm just going to have them jump in if I forget anything. So right now, obviously, a key thing is building upon that working dictionary that we have and QCing, quality control, reviewing it. So making sure that all of our transcription has been accurate. Just to add in, we also did honor and keep Swanton's 80 word and phrase list. So for those of you who don't know, Swanton was the first academic who came and spoke to Houma people in the early 1900s, and he collected 80 words and phrases. So we did keep those words. They are now transcribed into what we would think of as Houma. But we wanted to honor that. So as opposed to having a Choctaw word transcribed, for our vocab, we kept those 80 words to honor Swanton and to honor our tribe's history. So that's an interesting thing with our dictionary. But we are going to go back. We're also talking about what we're doing is working toward figuring out how to create like a formula or a system for generating new words, right? Because our dictionary has not caught up with the 2020s, shall we say. So we're working on that. And then we also have almost 3,000 lines of Oklahoma Choctaw sentences that we're transcribing and putting into our proper grammar as well, so we can better understand how just basic common sentences are said. We will be doing the same with Chickasaw and Choctaw folktales, and also Houma folktales that are written in English. We're going to work on translating those into Houma, which is really cool. Just so we all get a better grasp of the language and we better understand our own grammar and our own syntax and things of that nature. so that hopefully within another year, we'll be ready to start doing that lesson, like grammar and language lesson work for, the general public, the Houma people, really. So it won't just be this small team. We can start generating things for others to start learning. But before that happens, we have to do our due diligence. We have to take that time and make sure that we understand everything just that little bit better. Because right now we know the rules, but we can't always put them into action, if that makes sense. It's like understanding the concept of algebra and then looking at all those variables and going, nope, no thank you, not today, maybe tomorrow. Brittany and Ben, anything to add to that part?
So we went over kind of our document that we're using. So we have, so like Colleen said, we have like over 3,000 kind of individual sentences that we're looking at, and we're taking apart the grammar of those and kind of converting them into what we've decided for Houma. And so that's a really interesting project, and it's going to take a while, but it's going to be worth it because these are actual sentences that people have said in Choctaw and Chickasaw. So they're very authentic in that sense.
Yeah, I have nothing to add to that. This is basically all.
And something I'll tack onto that, and we're going to post more about this. I kind of hinted at it when I wrote the summary for this meeting. But, oh wait, so Elizabeth Purite said, Patricia Anderson has written how we have created new words in Tunica. Oh, if you can send us that info, that would be awesome. Also, David and Jason, I totally see y'all posting. I'm not ignoring y'all. I'm enjoying reading all of your comments. I just wanted to acknowledge that because this is her first post on here. So yes, thank you. If you can send us that info, that would be amazing. Oh my goodness, lost my train of thought. Yes, okay. So now that we're at this point and we've gotten largely the grammar rules decided, right? And I say that because grammar can always surprise you. There's always more complex ways of speaking. We might have more decisions later on, especially as we're working through informal speech versus formal, which is what you see in language learning books and lesson books, right? So we do want to start opening up more opportunities for other members of the Houma to participate in this. And we've definitely had some interest before, but we just had to wait to get to a good point where we could catch someone up and then keep going, right? So if you are a Houma member and you can dedicate, and I won't lie, guys, and gals, this is a long-term project, right? As Brittany said, this is a lifelong thing. Once you're part of this, we really do kind of ask that you be dedicated to it. And it is, about 3 hours a week that we're going to be working on this moving forward. We already do 2 hours. We're going to bump that up another one just because we're getting in a high gear. We've got those basic rules written out, and now we really need to buckle down and learn our stuff. So if you or any Houma they don't have to have a linguistics background, though that would really be helpful, right? Because then they might be able to just kind of grasp some things quicker. If they're able to dedicate, 3 hours of their time a week, by all means, you can help us. We'll start you out with our vocabulary dictionary work. Ben will take some time. He's already agreed to get you caught up on the grammar stuff we've done thus far. He's actually made this summary document of all the grammar rules he's been working on to better help someone kind of learn quickly. And then you'll start translating those sentences from our 3,000, almost 3,000 line list of sentences, so that you'll be learning and caught up with us and doing the same stuff that we do. Obviously, if you want to support the project, there are other ways. We have team members who don't really do the deep dive that we're doing now. They're more helping us with our social media and stuff like that. You can always just reach out and ask. But we really would love to have more people, if they have the time and the passion and they can commit to that, 3 hours a week, to come on and start learning with us so that we can push this forward even more within the next year.
Yeah,
Brittany,
I want to add on.
Did I miss anything?
No, you're good. I just want to add on to I don't want y'all to think that this group is just a group of dedicated young people, because right now I'm we are young, but we we're all in our 30s, and even we have some members in our 40s. But I mean, we're taking anybody of any age that, like Colleen said, can dedicate themselves. I have 2 children, married. I have a part-time job, and I also have another charity that I work with on the side. And then many of us on here, we have our hands in so many different things. So we're not saying that, we can only have one type of person to be here. I want you to be here if you want to be here. And that's what Colleen's asking for too. We just want you to know that this is going to take some dedication, because we can't move forward unless everyone can move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Well said.
Yeah, I want to add to just kind of explain more about the stages of the project. So right now we're in the stage where the founding members of the Houma Language Project are getting fluent. And so building on that, later on, maybe a couple years down the line, we'll start making actual lessons, and we'll do like a step-by-step lesson so that people can learn. So don't think of this right now as, you have to get fluent super quick. It's not going to be like that. Right now, we're still in the stage of getting everything in the language together and getting it all coherent, and then building lessons from that stage. I don't know. Did that make sense, Colleen? You probably explained it.
No, it did.
Yeah.
No, it did. And I want to add, like, it's also not to say, and I want to clarify this because it was a conversation we had amongst ourselves as a whole group a few weeks back. That's not to say that we're not going to post anything between now and when we have like a complete lesson plan, right? Or like a language learning book of our own, which will be amazing when it happens. I can't wait for that day. I lost my train of thought because I went to make a joke about allowing myself some of Donnie's wine that day. Anyway, he's another HLP member, by the way. But yeah, we have members of the project who want to use the vocabulary that we're working on and learning basic sentence structure so that they can share that when they're working in like different tribal projects or working with youth and their family, so that they can start teaching them basic things, even as we're trying to become masters ourselves, right? So that even if you're not going to learn how to speak right now, we're still going to be sharing basic phrases and words with others. We're not going to hoard this knowledge. We're going to be sharing with you as we learn, if that makes sense.
Actually, if we want to show them the Oklahoma that short phrases sheet, I can share the screen.
Sure, go ahead. Other people can be as boggled when they see it as we were the first time.
Okay, so let's see. Chrome tab. Let's see if this
I
works.
also want to say David Kaufman's in the chat. Yes, David Kaufman did help us in the beginning of our project for a lot of things. Haley invited him to a chat one day, and then he decided he was going to help us with his own time, and we really appreciate that. And unfortunately, like there are several other members in our group that couldn't dedicate the time anymore, but like he's still available to us, and we really appreciate your help, David. That's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't matter if if later on you figure out that you can't do it. We just want you right then, because like David, he helped us out in a time period when we really needed it. Mm-hmm. And so don't think there's nothing you can't do.
Yeah, and David's still on our group chat to this day. Before I forget, well, Ben, I know you just showed your screen, but let me plug this. So one of our other HLP members, Ida, I want to give Ida a shout out because they suggested that we open a Discord. So I have plugged the Discord into the event links for this event, but I'll also put it on the HLP page proper, so that as we move forward, if people have questions about language, you are always welcome, as we start sharing more, to post your questions about language or vocabulary there. We did also add a culture section just because we know from talking with other Houma that we're all kind of, as a side project, working on cultural things and history and traditions. So while that's not the focus of the HLP, we wanted to just have them both there and allow for people to have open discussions and ask questions in sort of a safe space about their language and their culture. So I will also share that after this meeting as well. Ben, you want to tell people about this lovely spreadsheet?
Yes, I love spreadsheets. All right. So this is a corpus of data. So just a collection of Choctaw phrases that were collected by, uh, her name is slipping off my mind. I can't remember her name, but she and several others have collected Choctaw sentences and phrases from a bunch of different sources. So like the Choctaw Numpa Volume 1 and 2, written by Marcia Hogg and Henry Willis. And then everything from like uh, the or the Choctaw Learning website, and then just things like uh, let's see where else. A lot of it from even like Choctaw newspapers, I think. Yeah, so there's like different Choctaw curriculums, and these are just kind of collections of phrases with the English translations. And what we're doing is just kind of essentially translating this from Choctaw into Uma based on the rules that we decided for Uma. So we'll have, I don't know, here's some examples, like the turtle swims. In Choctaw, it's, I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, but it's Luxiat Ukshanulli is turtle swims. And then we have an Uma, Luxiat Uksanulle. And so we'll leave a comment if there's any kind of weird grammatical things going on. We'll have a reviewed column, so anything marked with yes can be, sent off and used by the community now. So we eventually want to like share these sentences with people in the form of maybe like short stories. I know Brittany's working on some short stories and using some of these sentences. I don't know, Brittany, do you want to talk about that at all?
Talk about using my short stories or using sentences. I don't know what to say. I started my first short story, which I haven't finished it yet, because I'm kind of like a mood writer, if that's a thing. Like I have to be in a mood to write.
That is definitely a thing. Let's just
okay. So I'm
right
a mood
now.
writer. Some of my best work comes out when I'm feeling particularly passionate about something. Anyway, my first short story, I'll just give you a little bit, is about my grandmother. And it was an actual memory I have. And yeah, I'm writing it down. That's what I talked about. You can train your mind. I'm writing it down with the thoughts in mind that this is going to have to be translated between English and Uma. So some of the sentence structuring things will probably seem a little weird in English, but it'll make perfect sense in Uma by the time I'm done, hopefully. But yeah, that's part of what I was talking about. You have to retrain your mind about how relationships work, because the story I'm doing, that's a really intimate look at what our relationship was like with our grandmother growing up. It wasn't always good, it wasn't always bad, but it's just a memory that was imprinted on my brain, and I wanted to bring it to life with the words that she was never allowed to speak, kind of deal. And so I'm really lucky to be able to be a part of this project, to be able to do that, because it's like it's given her a new life. And like going back to the short phrases, it was, everyday things that you get to talk about. It's helping with that aspect, because, it's even helping translate what a child would say, because I'm not a child anymore, so I have to think about how would I have said this, because I'm elaborating on a conversation that was like maybe 2 minutes long. But yeah, practicing these short phrases every day. Well, not every day. I'm not perfect, but having these short phrases to practice is really helping with that. And hopefully one day I'll be able to read it to my, a finalized copy to my children.
Yeah, and this spreadsheet, like we said, is almost 3,000 rows. So we take, this is our homework. We give ourselves homework. It's not just that we're meeting and talking about language or making decisions. We're in the nitty gritty of translation now, and we can't just rely on Ben to translate everything. We've had refreshers already on rhythmic lengthening and how to determine that and stuff like that. But so, we each take 10 of these and translate them, and then we'll review them together. Sometimes we'll do 10 in a meeting together, and everyone just kind of goes through and takes their turn. So if you want to have an idea of what it's like to work on this project, it's translating these sentences and then discussing them to make sure that everything came out okay. I won't lie, if you hear me on these meetings, I get very excited when I get a sentence right, and I'm like, yay, I got my lengthening right, my long vowels, so on and so forth. But there was something I wanted to add. Oh, yes. Okay, so Brittany was talking about conversational, sentences and ways of speaking. And one thing that we've discussed, because even though we're not ready to build out those lessons, those like chapter lessons fully yet, right? We do still talk about what we would want to add. And one thing that we've discussed is like we want more conversational sentences and dialogue within our lessons. A lot of the books that we reviewed from numerous languages, not any one in particular, their examples are kind of not what children usually learn how to say first. So it's not like these are my favorite colors, or this is my favorite, I don't know, I want to quote like Miss Congeniality, my favorite date, or what is your ideal date, stuff like that. Like they're more about specific scenarios that adults deal with, like going to the doctor, which is just not how you generally start a lesson when you're learning language as a young person. So we're also trying to keep in mind and note those ideas that we have of what sentences and what concepts and what scenarios do we want in our lessons when we build them out. I know a big thing for me is I'm like, what would I talk about with elders when I meet them on a weekend to go have coffee? Because everybody knows you go to meet a Houma elder, before you talk about anything else, there has to be coffee. You have to talk about each other's family. They may try and feed you, and then you can talk business. So I really wanted to emulate, like, what is that coffee talk? How does that coffee talk sound? So those are sentences we're trying to work on too as well. It's not just the ones on the list, so they're great, but it's building out our own too.
Yeah, really informal speak, not not like formal, like how do you do, sir?
And we're
Like
constantly making jokes about, oh, this could be a meme, or like we should translate this song into Uma, or that video clip. I mean, if I had my way, half of the stuff that I generate would just be movie references and memes and random lyrics.
Which is about right, like the evolution of a language learner. A lot of people joke about that, like, oh, I know like 5 words in this language. Let's apply this to everyday life. But I mean, it takes hold of you. You want to do that. You want that's about representation. You want things in your life that you can bring to this language that you're learning, which is, a language of your people. Uma is, for us. So you want that representation in life. You want the things that weren't there before to be there now, that you have a word to put to it, that you have a concept to put to it. Because I mean, what are words if they aren't concepts? So yeah.
And wasn't it, Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it like please? Like there was no direct translation for please because it's something that wouldn't have been said. I know that there was one word that we couldn't find a direct translation for that's very common in English, because in a Muskogean dialect, or from a Muskogean perspective, right? So from the perspectives of the tribes that live in this area, it would have been almost a subtle concession that you could not care for yourself or for your family. Like if you were asking things in a certain way.
It's like you're begging.
Yeah, it was almost like begging, which implied that
who do we ask about? It was somebody in the Mississippi Choctaw community. I can't remember his name.
I think it was Sam that was discussing that with us, but I could be wrong.
Sam,
maybe it was Jason. Else. Jason, who was on here earlier, so I'm sure if I'm wrong, he'll correct me.
Is Jason the one that has the little girl? I think that's why we asked him. I can't remember because they said that they were teaching their kid that too. That because Choctaw doesn't have the word please in it because you don't beg, kind of deal. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that goes, Brittany. I think that goes back to your earlier point of like this is a perspective changing thing to work on, and quite frankly, having to having to reclaim a language and become so intimate with the grammar of it. I know other foreign languages, and I will say I just understand linguistics so much better now that I've done this. And it kind of makes me want to go back and relearn the languages that I used to speak a little bit of, because I'm like, I understand the concept so much better. And I wonder how my perceptions would change between these languages as I spoke. Um, yeah, yeah. So I haven't seen any questions. I've seen awesome comments, y'all. Like, thank you for that. Oh, Miss Donna, I see you.
I
Thank you
think
for posting the Tunica word for
I
please.
think for a popular question that I think we've been asked a lot is why do you want this project to happen? Like what is this project for?
Well, I mean, I know why, but I'm also very opinionated. Brittany, would you like to go first?
I feel like I've already covered that just in the past 35 minutes. Why do I want to be in this project? Well, because like I said in the beginning, my grandmother and my dad, by extension, wanted to make sure we know who we were. And my mom died when I was 4. She wasn't Houma. She was a white woman. She also wanted us to know who we were. So I felt like I was like living up to her legacy too by being involved in my culture as much as I could, because for some people it's not a choice. You know, they're in their culture every day because we're a geography. You know, like if they're on the reservation or they have family members or whatever. It was different for us. I grew up in Marrero in Jefferson Parish, so we were not in the majority, the Houma people. That's because it was still our community, I guess you could say, but we were surrounded by everyone else. So I always wanted to be in the culture. I wanted to give back to the culture. I wanted to give back to my people because my grandmother, she couldn't do that when she was younger. So that was her wish for us, to be able to be involved as much as we could and have the right to do so. I want my children to be there. I live in Texas now, so they're not involved with it as much as I'd like. So the language is a way I can bring that into my home. I could teach them the language, and that's something that will stay with him. You know, talking about changing your perception, changing your mind, that's something that will stay with them for a long time. That's a positive thing that I want to leave in their lives. So why do I want this project to exist? I want it to exist because it's a positive thing in the world. We have so much negative. Why not? You know, why not relearn your language and take back your identity and who you are?
Yeah, I think, like Brittany said, I kind of talked about my interest in the beginning about how it strengthens community ties, and it builds that sense of community, that sense of identity for people. I really believe that it just it helps you better know yourself and who you are, and ties you all together, because language is so critical to how we interact with each other. I will say I first started talking or thinking about our native language, our Houma language, probably during graduate school. I read this story about Bambi and Arapaho, and it was an amazing opportunity for an indigenous community to have this popular film in their own language. And the person who fought for this and who worked on that project talked about the good that it brought. And then I started reading more and more about the death of native languages, and how each language, there's knowledge, there's wisdom. I want to say that. I don't want to say knowledge. I want to say wisdom. There's wisdom lost with every language that dies. And our language has been dormant for roughly a century, maybe over a century now. Math is admittedly not my strong suit. Um, so about a century, it's been dormant. And, I want to give credit to Houma French too, because a lot of our elders down the bayou still speak Houma French, and I would love to learn that too. Maybe let me get more of this underway and become fluent in this before I focus on anything else. But I knew that there were people working on Houma French, and I knew still that we had people, within the second half of the 20th century who were speaking Houma, and they may not, or singing it at the very least. And that was something that I felt I could push for, and I could connect the people necessary to start bringing that back. Not that we want to ignore Houma French or become dominant over it. I want both in this world, right? Like I want our Houma language, our native language, and I want the Houma French too, because it connects us to our other ancestors, the French, you know? And also too, I think for me, it just ties me to my elders, right? My relatives that have come before me. Like I never got to meet my great grandmother. I got to meet my great grandfather, and he was the only one who did speak French with me until I was about 5, and he passed away. But knowing that she had this legacy and that she was one of the last people to sing in Houma, and that to me was a legacy I wanted to carry on and to honor, just like Brittany's honoring her family. And it does. I mean, it's a cool thought to think that we're speaking, you know, in a tongue that connects us to our ancestors. And Ben, if we have a minute, yeah, we have time. We have 20 minutes. Could you actually talk about, I know we've gotten questions too about what is a language rebuild versus reclamation. And I think you have a very succinct way of putting that. So if you could explain what reclamation is versus rebuilding, that would be awesome.
Hey, Ben, before you do that, can I add on?
Sure.
David said in the comments, understanding of medicinal plants and medicine, etc. Yeah. Language, relearning your native language is activism in itself. And so, and it's, you know, Ben's about to talk about reclamation. We're reclaiming our knowledge, our wisdom, like Colleen said, through this language. And so there have been other people in our group, Ida for one specifically, helping bring back the plant knowledge in regards to medicinal and even sustainability and even survival. These are not things that you can get with the English language because they don't have that in its memory. Our language has that in its memory. So that's another good reason why this project exists. Because so much has happened in Louisiana and throughout the Southeast where our people have been and our relatives have been, that it was lost to us. And the language is the one thing that holds the clue to the past. All right, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah. So under this kind of umbrella of language revitalization is kind of like language revival versus reclamation. And they all have different aspects to them. So revitalization generally refers to a language that has some speakers left, but it needs to revitalize it so that younger speakers start to use the language as well. And then you have things like revival, which is there isn't like a solid agreed upon definition for revival versus reclamation. But revival would generally mean that this language was spoken in the past. There may not be any native speakers left, but there's like full documentation. There's resources people can use to pick it up again. Versus reclamation, which is a language that no longer has any speakers at all. Maybe it was not fully documented. They're like missing pieces describing the grammar. And the reclamation refers to taking those pieces and kind of, you know, reconstituting them to make it, you know, a full language based on the knowledge that is available. And that's what we've been doing with Houma and Uma. So there was a Houma like language that was related closely to Choctaw and Chickasaw, but that version of the language became dormant in the very early 1900s. And so what we have now is a kind of extrapolation of what that would have looked like today. So we took the documentation from the original Houma language, looked at all the different patterns and compared it to Choctaw and Chickasaw and say like, okay, well, this sound looks like it changed to this sound and this sound changed to this sound. And based on those differences, we've kind of built out, you know, what Houma would have looked like today if those changes had continued. And so there is some kind of precedent for this kind of work. So one example would be Wampanoag in the Northeast. So it wasn't as extensive because they have, a long list of words and grammar to work with, but they were still missing some words, and they had to look at other Algonquian languages to kind of fill in the gaps in that sense. Um, Another kind of similar project might be modern Hebrew. So modern Hebrew was kind of developed in, I believe, the late 40s or early 1950s, as a way of building up an identity in what is now Israel. And so there was a biblical version of Hebrew, and then it had undergone, some changes to get to its modern form today. And that's a really interesting story. And if anyone's interested in more about that, I have a book kind of documenting all those changes and how modern Hebrew is different from biblical Hebrew and the whole revival process of Hebrew. I don't know. Anything? Did I miss anything else, Colleen?
No, I love how you, the linguists, are asking me if you missed anything else in your explanation. No, I think it makes sense, and I think just to offer a different way of phrasing it, because I'm always about, everyone hears things a little differently. Essentially, we didn't have, when we started this project, we were told by one academic, like, oh, you need at least 5,000 words to start working to bring back a language, and you need sentences. And we didn't have that. We had 80, right? Like, that's what we had. But what we've done is that we did take those 80 words and we took what we knew about the sentence structure from the few phrases we had. And again, as Ben said, we did a comparison with Chickasaw and Choctaw. So when we talk about Houma, what we're talking about is we made the best educated guess possible and how the more ancient Houma, or at least antiquated Houma, ancient to me is a little far-fetched, the more antiquated dormant Houma would have evolved just as Choctaw and Chickasaw have evolved over this past century. So that's what we're saying. It's essentially contemporary Houma, right? It's modern day Houma. We had to work to get there. We had to work a little bit harder because we didn't have speakers for that evolution. We had to piece it together ourselves. But we've always tried to work on this project, and maybe that's the final thing I want to say to this. We always try and do this in a good way and in a way that honors who we are. Like, there are several Houma that work on this project. There's no sort of lead or president when we're working. We make decisions together, and we talk about every decision, and we talk about not only the examples that we see from Chickasaw and Choctaw, but also what feels right and what I don't know how to put this into words, like what ties best to our culture and the bits of our language that we know. And as I said, I think at the beginning of this, like, there are some decisions the further we got along that just felt right. There are certain ways of saying things that trip over the tongue better. And we do have members of this project who do speak Houma French, and they look at, what we're doing with Houma. And even though they are very disparate languages, when they look at Houma, they say, oh, like, I may not understand what it's saying, but when I hear it, it flows to me and it makes sense to me, which is a cool thing to me because we know from others studying Houma French, it's a more lyrical form of French than others speak. And so, we worked hard to keep that lyrical quality in Houma. And so, like, to see that parallel is great. And to hear someone note that was very rewarding. I don't think we've had any real questions. We've had some awesome comments, but Brittany, Ben, any final thoughts? We've got about 12 minutes.
No, I was just going to add on what you're saying about us being lyrical and our tongue. It wasn't one of the explorers mentioned about how we sang to them, talking about our ancestors, sang to them the whole way from the boat to their village. And we're like, we could have just been talking to them like, why are you here? But it sounds like a song, because that's how lyrical this language has become and has really always been. And that goes into our personalities too. I mean, this is totally anecdotal, but anybody I've met and the family and the tribe, we have big personalities. So, I mean, that could be an extension of who we used to be, you know?
Yeah, and I had never actually put that thought together before. Of like, they could have actually just been talking to you and you didn't grasp it.
It's like talking
but-
crap to you, like, go back to your boat.
Yeah, because well, I kind of want to believe that they were singing because I just sing all the time. Like I so last year, just as a side note, I did this thing where for every day of Native American Heritage Month in November, I posted like some historical extract about Houma people and first contacts with Houma people. And when I posted that one about singing, I had so many relations like message me or comment that, you know, they love to sing and so on and so forth. And I'm like, yeah, we're very loquacious, sort of chatty, talkative. You know, we have to where our mouths are moving, and it's always in good fun. We're gonna chat with you. We'll probably sing with you. There will be some sort of music, and we're always gonna feed you. Which is essentially what happened to that little priest. But you know, he didn't. I don't think he appreciated it enough. That's just me. But
Looks like we have a question. I'm gonna see if
about turkey.
How do you say turkey?
Ben, do you have the dictionary open?
Well, I know what it's. It was actually one of the words documented in the original
that we have in the
Houma
80.
list. Yeah, and it's in Choctaw. It's fuck it. that's how you say it.
Yeah, fuck it.
But
FAKIT.
Yeah. But in the original Houma words, it was written as paket. So PAK. We assume like a long A sound and then T.
Yeah,
I'll put that in the chat.
There you
So
go.
it's probably a way, because I think they were either French or English speakers, the two old Houma women. So maybe around that time, the word kind of changed to avoid that kind of English expletive. I know that I think Chickasaw, or maybe Chickasaw doesn't have a word, but I remember one dialect, like they completely changed the word for turkey because of that. But I kind of like the original. It's fun to say.
Yes, Miss Donna. We know it's nicer. It's just kind of funny. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, like I don't know if it's because the French and the English decided, ooh, you can't do that. That's vulgar, or we just change it because of some sounds, some like the K and G. It just sounds different depending on the speaker, you know, and that changes over time.
Oh, I also wanted to say, like Donna was writing akanka chaha, which is I think it's right, tall chicken, right? It's funny because the Houma word for chicken was also given in that 80 word list, and it's based off of turkey. So it's paketelu.
Paketelu, yeah. Strange turkey or alien turkey, or
Yep.
Yeah, that elu is kind of like different, or I think it might be related to like holo, which is like spiritual, or so that kind of sense. So it's like the white man's turkey, kind of in that sense.
Yeah, for anyone who wants to just get a laugh, like look up. I've only read the Houma relations with chickens, but like because chickens were not indigenous to this continent, you can read some really entertaining stories about tribes' reactions to chickens and how they felt about chickens. We really loved chickens. You were not allowed to kill chickens in our village or villages. There were two at the time that I'm thinking of. So if you just want to be entertained by quote unquote crafty Frenchmen trying to attain a chicken because they're hungry, like, yeah.
We had chickens in our yard before it was cool.
Not just in the yard, in the house. They were in the house.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. But we kept it exceptionally clean. They wrote about that too, about how clean we were.
Oh yeah, constant sweeping. I still want to one day make a proper Houma cabin, but that's just a completely different note. Obviously, all my life is obsessed with all things Houma history and culture, and like just reviving stuff because it connects me to my ancestors. That's important to me. Do we have any other questions or comments from our awesome audience before I let y'all go?
Jason's going to try and change chicken to that in Choctaw. I fully endorse that. Fully endorse that. Yes. Pakit Yes, do it. Do it.
Oh, Jason, actually, am I allowed to? Can I ask a question of the audience while we're on here?
Yeah,
Does
sure.
that work? Jason, do y'all have any? I know because COVID has kind of screwed everything up, but do you have any further idea when that Mississippi Choctaw Dictionary will be done? Oh, Jason, I will have to send you that list offline because it's like an entire document from an excavation of a Bayou Gula site, and they talked about the houses and the cabins. So I will totally send that to you later. Like, I can send you the whole document later. No worries.
I'm going to summarize.
But it was Waddle and Daub, if that helps.
Yeah.
I guess one more
Otto
question.
said, don't come between a Frenchman and his chicken. I mean, we probably had some fights over chickens.
Monday.
Oh, no, we call them chanchuba, but I mean that's also just the first real word in the language that I learned was chanchuba. Because what Elvira and Valentine sang, one of the songs that they sang was the Alligator Song, Chanchuba. Also very interesting, and I'm not saying that they're connected because, you know, there's no way for me to prove that at this time. But so Elvira and Valentine sang a song called the Alligator Song, and it was Chanchuba. However, there's also a very old historical document, and I believe was it Father Derues or Bienville? One of those people, you know, like one of those people that I can't think of right now, guys, because my brain is just fried. It's the weekend. I don't think on the weekend. Wrote about there was a person who was sick in the village, and one of the things that the two healers did to try and help that person was to sing a song to the alligator spirit. So again, I can't say that there was a connection there, but it was really cool to know that we have a Chanchupa song and then go back through, you know, these historical documents and hear a reference of an alligator song. I like that.
I think one more question that I think people would want to know is what's been the most fun thing about kind of developing and learning Houma?
Can I go? Can
I
please go? Okay, so there is this running joke, and David, I see your question. Ben, if you wouldn't mind typing out Chanchupa, because you know I don't have nasal sounds right now for some reason. Thank you.
That's right. Yeah,
so my favorite thing, and Brittany and Ben and Haley and anyone who gets on the calls when this happens get a big kick out of it. I love the word balele, which is to dance. And so every time I see that in our homework, I'm like, I want to take this sentence. This is my sentence. Balelele, balele tuk, balelele. Like, I don't care what version it is. I think I just made that a nasal one that doesn't even make sense verb tense wise. I just love that we have these really fun, repetitive synonyms sometimes. Yeah, so balelele tuk.
I ran. Yeah.
Ran?
Yeah, ran.
Yeah, ran.
Oh, I said dance. Sorry, guys. Again, weekend, brain not online. But I just love that. Again, we went for that lyrical quality, and when you spell out some of these words, there's this awesome play on long and short vowels with these repetitive, syllables. There we go. It just tickles me every single time. But yeah, so that's my favorite thing. Brittany, what's yours?
I can't remember. There's a few of them. I'm drawing a blank right now too.
Also, our Google animal.
Oh my goodness.
So we do a lot of work in Google Docs and Google Sheets, and I swear it's become tradition at the beginning of every meeting. We have to know who's Google, like which Google animal belongs to which person, and it's amazing. It's like our little intro every time.
Oh, I've just remembered. Talua, just that verb to sing is my favorite. You know how you say it? That's one of my favorites. And anything you add onto it. I'm not a fan. Let's let y'all know now. Colleen and Ben knows how much I despise prefixes and suffixes, and that's a lot in this language. Like you can make a completely different sentence with a prefix or a suffix that you add, just like a different type of a sentence. So it's really important. But yeah, it would be Dalua. It's one of I don't mind because I just like the way you say it. Oh, I was looking at Ms. Donna. She said I like using Uma when I message
I know.
Colleen and others on Facebook. Yeah, I know.
She also put the tunica for like mangy dog,
Yeah.
which is amazing.
I know. I wish when they were doing their Tunica language learnings web series and stuff, I was part of that. And so I still use some of it. Miss Donna, I forgot a lot of it, but I still use some.
Miss Donna,
you look bad.
I need to message you for something comical but not entirely appropriate for a serious conversation about language. To wrap up, okay, so obviously I got my verbs mixed up. Is dance itha? What is dance then?
Yeah, itha.
Okay, so I got Balele and Itha mixed up. It happens. All right. I think we're gonna end on time. Thank you all for the comments that we saw and asking questions and sharing good thoughts with us. We really appreciate it. I hope other Houma get to watch this and enjoy learning more about the project. Again, we'll be putting out additional information for those who want to participate in the project. We are asking for some really dedicated individuals because it is going to be about 3 hours of work a week. But we are always here to support each other. We make each other laugh. I mean, these people are my family. I've basically said if I knew traditional adoption methods, because the Houma actually were pretty big on adoption, I would have adopted Ben years ago at this point. You know, they are
It's
family.
still going to happen. It's still going to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Make it.
Oh,
make
one last funny story, guys. I said that, you know, we are a family. So we started calling, if y'all remember Salt Bay, we now call Ben Uma Bay. So if you can figure out the nasal on your keyboard and you ever want to hit up Ben with a home question, just call him Uma Bay.
Uma Bay.
Uma Bay.
Bay.
All right, but thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have an amazing weekend, and I hope you keep following on this journey with us. So,
yeah.
Yakuke.
Yakuke.
Yakuke. Bye.